The Money Problem, Part 3. Your ego responses to tightening your belt. Look, there's no silver bullet for this part. It's just going to keep coming up in small layers on a daily basis, and you'll just keep chipping away at it little bit by little bit. Ego is a mechanism of separation. And so ego always aims to indicate and illustrate separation where it exists. And there are very few separation issues that get ego's attention the way that money challenges do. Ego loves to remind you that you're separated from money. And that little voice inside your head can drive you 50 shades of insane. So the best thing you can do is understand what is happening to you inside your head so that you can manage it moment to moment when you need to. When ego separates, the first thing it does is create a hierarchy. So someone is inferior and someone is superior. This happens in terms of situations too. So the truest thing we can say of an ego experience is that it is anything that makes you feel inferior or superior to a person or experience. The only two superior emotions in the ego range are anger and judgment. And just think about that. You have to feel somewhat superior to feel you have a right to be angry at someone. Likewise, judgment. In order to be judging what someone does or says, it automatically presupposes that you have access to superior knowledge in that arena. So both of these, anger and judgment, denote superiority. The balance of ego emotions, however, place you in a position of inferiority. These include fear, doubt, resistance, embarrassment, humiliation, shame, vulnerability, guilt, frustration, impatience, jealousy, envy, possessiveness, and competition. And then finally, the surprising two ego emotions, awe and admiration. These both place you in a position of inferiority to the object of your admiration. So if you are feeling any of the emotions listed above, it is your ego reaction or response, because those are the only emotions and thoughts you can ever be sure are driving what you feel and are experiencing. This isn't exactly the ego that you were taught about previously, is it? Nope. You were told that ego means that guy that's arrogant who makes you feel less important somehow. But just think about that scenario for a moment. Somebody walks into a room and is confident, and this makes you feel inferior. But you don't want to take responsibility for that, because it means work, and anyway, you're never wrong. And so you project that concept and energy outwards, labeling the other person as arrogant. If a person was truly arrogant, then everyone would find them arrogant, and that is never the case. It doesn't matter how arrogant the person is deemed to be, those closest always say something different. Even if you think about arrogance, it seems obvious as a projected mirror. Arrogance is when you feel that the other person believes that they are more important than you. In other words, you have looked at their words, body language, knowledge, demeanor, and behavior, and you have decided that the sum total of those actions means that this person thinks they are superior to you. And honestly, that last little bit is the real giveaway. We hardly think about anyone except ourselves ever. So why would this person even be centering their being around you, worrying about being better than you? In most cases, when you meet a so-called arrogant person, you usually meet them for the first time. So what exactly did you do that would contribute to them seeing you as a threat and wanting to be superior to you? You're a stranger to them. You're as much of a stranger to them as they are to you. Do you worry about strangers all the time? We don't call people we know arrogant, except in the case of true narcissists and psychopaths. If we know someone personally, We tend to call them mean or angry or rude or selfish. Arrogance is reserved for those we don't usually know well or at all. People we see or have seen at a distance. The label is mostly applied to people we hardly know at all and based on a singular experience. So we look at this person we don't know and have seen for only a moment and decide that they are self-important and believe that they are superior to us. Often without any conversation that actually validates this, but we'll look for meaning to interpret to prove that anyway. Why isn't the person labeled mean or rude? Why are arrogant and egotistical so quickly applied in this scenario? Because we don't actually understand what ego is. So let's boil it down to a nutshell. Ego is a mechanism of separation. It creates separation between you and something else. Think about anything that has caused you pain. Now identify the thing that you were separated from. You can be separated from people, experiences, money, hope, friendship, love, success, you name it. And the pain is always about a separation of some sort. So if you are separated from something, you are experiencing ego. But notice that the experience of perceived separation is taking place inside of you. There are two kinds of losses: sacrifice or having something taken away. When you lose something you used to, it's a habit that you're breaking, a habit of comfort usually. This is having something taken away. How do I know this won't kill you? Well, let's do an experiment. Take your wallet, watch, jewelry, and any other small treasures and pile them on your desk or your bed. Now step back. You still okay? Okay, well then try another step. And now another, and another, and just keep walking further and further and further and further and further away until you really understand that nothing bad has happened to you. It doesn't matter how far you get away from all that stuff. You can still breathe and walk, and you don't have a third arm growing out of your head. Also, you were born without all that stuff and you were perfect. You've survived without it before. That's kind of how I knew the experiment was safe for you to do at home. The second kind of loss you can experience is sacrifice. Sacrifice means you never had it, but you wanted it, and then you had to give it up because you didn't get what you wanted. You know, when you read it that way, it kind of sounds like the whiny brat complaint that it actually is. You're moaning about the loss of something you never had but wanted. If you never had it, you've already proven you can live without it. You'll be fine. But somehow, your ego is still bruised. And even though we've dealt with a few of the more common money mirrors already, we still need to give you a toolkit to deal with the other day-to-day ego issues that arise when you aren't near a computer to read the advice. When your inner voice runs rampant, I mean. The 7 P's of ego. So ego likes to manifest itself in one of 7 ways, the 7 P's of ego. First, you get personalization. I am separate and I have these characteristics. Then, projection. That person is separate and has these characteristics. Possession denotes that that object is separate, has these characteristics, and I can possess that object. Privacy means I will hold this thought, person, or object separate. Protection, I will hold this thought, person, or object separate in order to keep it safe. Parallels is comparing the characteristics of one thought, person, object to the characteristics of another thought, person, object. And the final P is power. I will control this person, thought, or object and hold it separate because it gives me power, or I believe it empowers me. How to use the understanding is that you look at the issue you're facing, identify which P it belongs to, and then apply the questions that will follow. Below, I have linked this article, and I've also linked more in-depth money mirrors questions, as well as a less complex version of the mirrors questions for beginners. Personalization.
You should really get that treated.
What?
Your self-pity gland, it's incredibly swollen.
Go to hell.
I'm a doctor, I can see from here.
Personalization is when we go into victim mode and we assume that this is only happening to me. Loads of shame and doubt taking place here, and you really just want to hide away. You tend to personalize the blame and pain, laying blame on yourself and finding yourself unworthy and guilty. With this, you're much more inclined towards suicidal tendencies, depression and despair, and you're asking yourself questions like, what is wrong with me? You tend towards thoughts like, I am not worthy or wanted. Another layer of personalization that occurs is the personalization of self-importance. And your sense of self-importance is very attacked when your lifestyle needs are not being met, because we build our self-worth based on what we can afford and the freedom that affords us. If you're battling with personalization, you want to ask yourself questions like, what am I taking personally? What do I think is aimed at me? What do I think is being done by me? And what do I think is being done to me? The next P of ego is projection. When we project, it's often because we don't want to take blame, which can be driven by a sense of self-importance. Additionally, the projection of issues enables us to avoid taking responsibility. We can't do anything about it if it's somebody else's fault. A nice way to understand the difference between a narcissist or psychopath and empath is, a narcissist personalizes importance and projects blame, while an empath projects importance and personalizes blame. So a narcissist is more likely to attack outwards and an empath more likely to attack themselves. So where that empath characteristic would lead to suicide in personalization, with projection it turns into external attack of some sort. If you're looking at projection issues, questions to ask yourself include, what am I assigning to someone else? What do I blame others for? What do I give others credit for? And where do I take blame that I shouldn't? The third P of ego, possession. The loss of possessions is something that tends to hit us very hard on the money journey, but really as it pertains to our day-to-day lives. You don't always get to a stage of selling possessions, but you do experience a loss in income that changes the way that you spend and the possessions that you accumulate going forward. It's all about habit, you see. You're used to walking into the mall and going to a few certain stores, with one or two stores that you buy from each time. Now maybe you can only buy from one store, or perhaps even none at all. So why are you at the mall then? Oh, right. Retail therapy is also entertainment, and now you don't know how to keep your mind occupied. A habit is like an addiction. You need your fix. And if you don't do what you're used to doing, you'll end up feeling wrong, bereft and deprived. But the torture won't end there, you see. When you get out the car, you're used to grabbing a certain number of bags, feeling the weight in your hands, so you feel bereft all over again. And then when you get inside, you suddenly have an extra 15 minutes on your hands that you would usually spend unpacking groceries and bags, and so you feel bereft again. It's going to happen like this, over and over and over again, each time you pass your favorite coffee store or have to calculate mentally if you can join your friends for lunch. And then the shame starts to kick in. Questions to ask yourself. What do I want to possess or own? Why am I so attached to this? What do I think having this will give me? Privacy. We really tend to hide out of shame, don't we? As if someone seeing us would mean that they automatically know about that terrible dark secret we're carrying and that we so desperately hope no one will find out. Just think about how you do that. You go somewhere and worry the whole time people will find out about something. It's all-consuming. You constantly watch every little thing you say, afraid you've given up the game. Privacy is a killer, and it's all about doubt, humiliation, embarrassment, and shame. It's a lot about jealousy and competition too. If I look good enough next to these people, then I must be okay, as long as they don't find out that, ... The fastest and best way out of the privacy cycle? Tell someone. Tell a couple of people if you can. Each time you verbalize something, you realize a little more that you will be fine. So break privacy as quickly as possible with any of the ego layers. You'll be pleasantly surprised at how effective it is as a strategy. Questions to ask yourself if you're battling with privacy are: what thoughts am I holding private? Where am I lying? Where am I not telling the whole truth? What am I hiding? Protection. When it comes to money issues, you want to protect two things. First, your lifestyle and comfort, and secondly, your reputation, how other people view you. But what we resist persists. So you will land up losing the things you desperately try to hold on to and protect. Questions to ask yourself include: what do I want to protect? What am I attached to? What am I scared of losing? Parallels. In that moment when you're standing next to your friend at the coffee cart while she's buying her 4th cappuccino for the day, you can't help but compare yourself to her and draw parallels. That's what this mirror is all about. Look how inadequate or wonderful you are compared to that person over there. Questions to ask yourself include: who am I comparing myself to? What am I jealous or envious of? Why do I think that this will make my life or experience better? The final P of ego is power. We all feel powerful or not to a lesser or smaller degree, and in the modern world, money is power. So when you face money issues, it definitely attacks your sense of personal power, which can lead to feelings of inadequacy all round. In addition, power has another element: responsibility. Often, we don't want to take responsibility for what we've done to cause the situation, and we are certainly lazy to get up and do something to fix it. Especially when we feel so powerless and hopeless after everything we've done to try and rectify it already. So we wait and hope for the next shift, the miracle, the silver bullet that will magically fix everything. And we hold on to that dream, because it means we don't have to take responsibility for where we are. Questions to ask yourself: where do I give away my power? Who do I see as powerful or having power over me? Where do I exert power and control over others? And do I use my power wisely?